Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're completely tearing down some incredibly outdated financial advice and building a much more raw, practical framework for hitting your true potential. If you've ever felt like your goals are just constantly out of reach, well, you're in exactly the right place. We are going to totally rethink how we bridge the gap between where we are right now and where we desperately want to be. Let's get into it.
Okay, think about this super provocative idea for a second. When you or I go to the grocery store and grab a carton of milk, literally the very first thing we do is check the expiration date, right? But most of us never check for the expiration date on our beliefs. We're essentially running old, glitchy software in a completely new world.
So that brings us to phase one, the obsolete rules of money.
You know, the 1970s rule book told us all to go to school, get a steady, safe job, save our pennies, and avoid debt like the plague. But look at our modern reality. We live in a world where governments are printing literally trillions of dollars. And when you print money like that, cash is trash. Inflation and taxes just absolutely crush the people who are trying to save. In this new reality, figuring out how to strategically use debt to build wealth is the real game changer.
Let's put that into perspective. Imagine a highly successful doctor working hard for a steady paycheck. They finally hit that massive milestone of making $1 million in a single year. Amazing, right? But after taxes, they might only take home around $400,000. Now, contrast that with an entrepreneur who acquires real estate using bank debt. By leveraging that debt and using tax incentives instead of just taking a taxable paycheck, they keep the entire million. It's a totally different ballgame.
So the big takeaway here is that holding on to that traditional middle-class mindset, clinging to the false security of a steady paycheck and being terrified of debt is a losing strategy today. We're living in a world where information doubles and becomes obsolete every 18 months. If your financial education hasn't been updated, you're going to get creamed. We really have to stop waiting for external forces to take care of us.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. Phase 2, the vision board trap.
So what are we usually told to do when we want to achieve something massive? Make a vision board, right? Slap pictures of a giant mansion, a sports car, and luxury vacations on a piece of cardboard. But here's the fatal flaw with that. If you're only visualizing the ultimate endgame while you're sitting in a cramped apartment with a messy cat box and a completely empty fridge, it creates this incredibly harsh contrast. And honestly, it backfires.
It really makes you wonder, why does staring at your ultimate dream actually make you feel worse? Well, staring at a mansion on a poster board while you're stressing over rent makes you feel powerless. It's just a glaring reminder of exactly what you don't have. In fact, research actually shows that obsessing over just the end game is super demotivating. That gap between where you are right now and where you want to be, it just feels impossible to cross. You end up feeling defeated before you even start.
Which leads us directly into phase 3, visualizing the messy bridge.
Now, this is your actual guide to making visualization work. Instead of just picturing the finish line of the marathon, you have to visualize the specific timeline, that messy, chaotic bridge between where you are and where you're going. Step 1 is actively visualizing the horrible, painful moments when things inevitably go wrong. Ask yourself, what does it feel like at hour 2 of the run when your earbuds die and you are just left alone with your thoughts? What about hour 3 when you feel a massive blood blister forming on your heel? What does it feel like the next morning when it's pouring rain, it's freezing, and you have to run anyway?
You might be thinking, why on earth would I do that? Well, by actively picturing the blood blisters, the pouring rain, and all those agonizing setbacks, you are literally training your nervous system. You're prepping your physical body so you don't instantly resist when those inevitable failures hit. When you do hit a snag, you won't freeze up in shock. Your brain's going to say, right, I remember this from my visualization. I know exactly how to push through. It builds absolute unbreakable endurance.
Because here's the real secret. Manifesting isn't just closing your eyes and wishing on a star. It's a highly structural process. It starts with writing down your goals, which forces you to actually think. That thinking creates a really vivid image in your mind. And when you repeatedly visualize the hard steps, the gritty reality of the bridge, that image biologically changes your cells to expect and handle the heavy lifting. If you constantly obsess over your current debt, you're going to stay in debt. But if you reprogram your thoughts to visualize the specific brutal actions required to overcome it, you shift your entire frequency.
Okay, moving on to phase 4, building your internal economy.
We hear the word economy constantly, right? Inflation, job markets, housing bubbles, all of that. But that's just the external economy. What truly matters, what makes the difference, is your internal economy.
This is your absolute willpower to control your internal state, your mindset, and your drive, no matter what kind of crazy external disasters are happening around you. Honestly, there's no such thing as a bad external economy if you've successfully built an unbreakable internal economy.
Let's look at how these two economies actually play out. A poor mindset is entirely externally focused. They rely on that steady paycheck, so if a job loss happens, it feels like the end of the world. But a true entrepreneur mindset, that's internally focused. They do not rely on the false security of an employer. Actually, when they lose a paycheck, they just get hungrier. They get smarter. They use that lack of safety as a test of their own character to bounce back even higher.
So to genuinely change your life, you've got to actively reevaluate who you are. First, you have to stop sabotaging yourself with fear. Fear isn't real. It's just obsolete software running in your brain. You need to shift away from that frequency of lack, worrying only about the debt or the roadblocks, and direct your mind straight to the bridge. Embrace every failure along that bridge as definitive proof that you are getting stronger. And most importantly, make extraordinary decisions in your normal, mundane, daily present.
The absolute crucial point here is that true wealth, whether we're talking financial, physical, or emotional wealth, is simply a byproduct. It is a byproduct of mastering your internal belief system. The very first job of anyone who wants to succeed is to gain total, unquestionable control over what happens between their own ears. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Are you actually ready to do the real work? It is time to check the expiration date on your brain, ditch the glossy, totally unrealistic vision board, and start visualizing the brutal but absolutely beautiful bridge to your future. It's going to rain, and you are for sure going to get blisters, but that is exactly how you know you're moving forward. Start building your internal economy today.